If you were unaware, our president, Donald Trump, has been in the process of planning and coordinating with other Republican governors to rig the 2026 midterm elections. And if he succeeds, there's good reason to think he will do it again in the next presidential election. How will he and Republican governors do this? Through a process known as gerrymandering. What is gerrymandering? Before answering that question, I want to do a super quick overview of how representation and districting works in the United States. Every state has a state legislative district map for their state legislature and a congressional map for the U.S. Congress. Citizens in those state districts vote for certain representatives to represent them in their state legislatures and other representatives to represent them at the federal level in the United States Congress. Ideally, the goal should be to divvy up the state in such a way that the entire population of a state is adequately represented at the state and the federal levels. I know this is a lot, but stick with me. Every 10 years, federal law requires a national census to be taken. After the census data comes in, state governments then use that data to redraw their legislative district map for representation in the state legislature. Census data is also to be used to create congressional district maps for proper representation in our United States Congress. In fact, federal law requires it. Sometimes this requires redrawing district lines a little and sometimes a lot. But the goal is, or at least should be, fairness in representing the entire population. Redistricting is something that is legal, is part of living in a constitutional and democratic republic, and has been done for the last 200 years. Here's where gerrymandering comes into play. Let's say a state district map is redrawn that prioritizes one group or maybe several groups in a state population over other groups, or certain political parties over others. That is called gerrymandering. Or if you know that a particular district in your state generally votes for Republicans or generally votes for Democrats, the lawmakers might want to redraw their state map to ensure that those candidates of their political party will likely win. Again, this is what is called gerrymandering. Our next census is not until 2030, which means if states followed the usual protocol, they would wait to redistrict until then. It is not against the law, but most states don't redistrict until the 10-year mark. Here's the problem. Trump has pressured Republican governors to redistrict their congressional maps because he knows it can give Republicans an unfair advantage in Congress. But they are not merely redistricting, they are gerrymandering. Republican Governor Greg Abbott and Texas Republican lawmakers were the first to join the bandwagon of Trump's plan to rig the midterm election when they passed their new maps in August. Missouri governor and their lawmakers voted to do the same in September. Utah lawmakers also attempted to do this recently, but a state district court stopped them, saying it violated voters' rights. Other Republican-led states are set to do the same. So what is California Governor Newsom doing with the Election Rigging Response Act? Newsom is responding to this onslaught of Republican governors who are trying to rig the upcoming midterm elections by recommending California does the same. Why? Isn't that just playing the same deceptive tricks that Republicans are doing? Well, because Trump and Republicans know that they are going to get away with a power grab in our United States Congress relatively unchecked. Newsom also knows that the U.S. Supreme Court could stop them from gerrymandering their states, but they won't, due to their ongoing passes that they continue to give the president. Newsom believes that if Democrats have any chance in putting a check to Trump's horrendous abuse of power and the Republican governors who enable it, then California should also gerrymander their own maps to make up the difference of lost seats in Congress that will be stolen in the midterm elections by Republican-led states. For those who are concerned about Newsom's decision, I share that sentiment. I do, however, want to point out a key difference in Newsom's decision and these other Republican governors. The Republican governors and the lawmakers who voted for their gerrymandered maps made this decision entirely on their own. What Newsom and California lawmakers are doing is different. They are presenting this plan to California voters, who will then vote on this in November, this upcoming November. So ultimately, the voters will decide. There is still a chance they won't vote on it. There's plenty of Republicans in California who will vote no, and there may even be some Democrats and independents who may also vote no. As for me, I share Newsom's concern. Republicans have enabled Trump far too long. If we don't do something that will put a check to his power, he will continue down the path of authoritarian rule until we become a police state that serves his interests alone. The midterms are the elections that sit right in the middle of the presidential term, and there is ample evidence that suggests a growing number of Americans who voted for Trump in 2024 are now regretting their decision. The effects of Trump's tariff policies, the escalation of violence by ICE agents, the firing of tens of thousands of federal employees who help make the government run smoothly, has had real impacts on both Republican and Democratic voters. Because all Americans rely on certain federal services on a regular basis. The mass layoffs of 10 to 20,000 federal employees that worked in either the CDC, NIH, or FDA also is having real impact on access to adequate public health information and services. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please do me a favor and hit like on the video. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe for more breakdowns like this. If you want to support my work, become a paid subscriber to my weekly Substack newsletter. There's also a free option. The link is in the description.